over time, you start to realize that anything that caused you to be desperate enough to really make a substantial change, that could be really big. And you start to, and if you embrace those things and make benefit out of it, later on, you look at the desperation as a gift, but you don't look at it in the initial stage because you're still in the middle of the storm. All right. So welcome to the inaugural episode of the podcast, Dancing on a Volcano. I'm here with David Berger. Hi, Dave. What's up, brother?
Hello. How you doing, Jim?
So, we've been setting this up for a while, and as I was just saying to him, we really can't mess this up. This is an opportunity to have a conversation and just talk about some things and kind of paddle into the wave and see where it goes. So
I love that analogy.
Right. So Dave and I have known each other for several years now. In the interest of full disclosure, Dave is my personal trainer. Dave owns a business called Progressive Fitness Coaching, which is based in southeastern Pennsylvania, right outside of Kennett Square. And he sees some, various out of shape people who he helps to get in better shape.
These are apparently healthy athletes.
Right. Well, he's been, very instrumental in helping me to recalibrate my body and get in better shape, frankly. As I recall, when I first met you, I had injured a shoulder. Mm-hmm. I was having difficulty getting up and down the steps, breathing pretty heavily. I had been told at that point that surgery was probably going to be a good idea. They told me that I hadn't actually pulled any specific, torn any muscle fiber.
In your shoulder.
Yeah, but they told me that there was I had a bone spur in my shoulder. And they were talking about going in there and digging that damn thing out. And, so you and I started working together. I went to a physical therapist there for a little bit, and physical therapy was like, wasn't really my cup of tea. I also felt like, just slowly but surely, I progressively gotten out of shape.
Yeah. I mean, physical therapy is just going to focus on what they need to rehab.
Right.
It's not going to take the whole thing in.
Right.
So definitely a difference there. And it's harder, I think, to practice in physical therapy. They give you stuff to do outside, which everybody should certainly do, right? Because consistency is the king, but few people really do in that realm,
Well, that's why I liked the concept of actually having somebody come out and train with me. Like my past history's been, I usually had like a workout partner. I was gym rat in my younger years. I had somebody to meet up with me and, and basically, you held each other accountable, you know what I mean? Like, and there was a social aspect to it. And one of the benefits of having somebody like you show up is an accountability piece for sure. You know what I mean? Like, I know you're coming. So, and you have a, pretty positive way about you that I think lends itself really well to, to your practice and what you do. And frankly, I wouldn't be where I was if it wasn't for you. But there's also an aspect that we'll dig into a little bit about, we get to talk in a way that you catch me early in the morning. For us, it's a 6 a.m. evolution, right? And so you catch me all natural before the days really hit. So sometimes you're catching me from the first thoughts post wake up, or even what I dreamed at the night before. So some of the conversations we have, are tied more to, what's going on in your life or my life, more in what's going on in my life than yours. I know I'm the client. I get that. But, but there's I guess what I'm saying is being a personal trainer is more than just personal training. I've learned that through you, that, that there's an underlying relationship that's built.
Sure.
And, and I've really, kind of enjoyed, while you kick my ass over the time, I've enjoyed getting to know you better.
But we make it a lot of fun.
Yeah, you say that. MF her. I don't know how much I'm allowed to curse, you know what I mean? Like, and have YouTube break my monetization strategy. Not like I really have one. I don't see seas of people signing up to watch these early podcasts, so we can kind of, but at the same time, I'm an old Navy sailor. So, when I'm talking naturally, there's going to be some of that in there. There's just no way around it.
I don't think there is.
Yeah. Right. So let's talk a little bit about, so I spent a little time perusing your website, right? So I looked a little bit into it when when I was first, I found you. I think you were a Google search away. You know what I mean? And
yeah, it was through Bark.
Yeah, and we were coming out of the back end of the pandemic. People were still a little mask happy. You know what I mean? We had moved, 5 minutes from you, and had been in the house for maybe 4 or 5 months. And I had torn my shoulder pulling a garage door down, putting a Grand National away, and and I was just basically nursing it, kind of like imbalanced in terms of even like what I could do. So, so you started out really gentle with me, range of motion and stuff. But I remember when you first showed up, you were like, you told me a story about, and you kind of breezed over it a little bit, a story about like you as a young man, right? And, being, pretty dreadfully out of shape yourself, and, some changes that went on for you. And then ultimately, as I recall, and I know, on the floor getting my ass kicked, I can see that Ironman tattoo on the back of your calf all the time. So there's an interesting story about transitional behind that, But, one of the first dances on a volcano for you, I think of, is the dancing on a volcano of transitioning from being, dreadfully out of shape into, basically turning your life around and then making it into a career. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, how'd you get rolling with that? Like, what was the gift of desperation that led you to?
Gift of desperation. I kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, it's like a whole, it's a whole lifetime. And I feel like super fortunate that I've gotten to live on both sides of that mirror.
Right.
So, I mean, let's go for it. Like, we're on a podcast.
Fucking
here,
right.
so,
Let's do this, bro.
like so many kids product of the 90s, come from a divorced house, a very abusive divorced house. I have zero relationship with my dad today, so that kind of tells you a lot.
Right.
Yeah, so I was always a fat kid. And looking back on it now with all the knowledge I have now on how all of this transgresses over the years, it's just purely emotional stuff. It's just food was my only saving grace. Like, it was just like, that's the only place I had control in my life. But it was out of control. Right. And, it's just very emotional. So it became very heavy, unathletic, of course, all that stuff goes along. And, at any rate, so that was childhood. And then you get into the teen years, you get into high school, it gets worse, right? As far as like the name calling and everything like that. But I was still a pretty gregarious person. So it wasn't like I was isolated or anything. But at any rate, I was a loser. I was just a fat kid. I didn't give a shit about school.
You smoked, right?
I smoked cigarettes, smoked weed. I've done everything bad under the sun.
You're in the right company.
Never injected anything.
Yeah, you're in the right company, though. You know my history, so
and what goes along with that is you also hang out with like-minded people. So it's all in the wrong crowd and everything.
Yeah.
But then, I dropped out of high school. I was working at it was at the time my grandfather's auto upholstery shop out in Springfield, Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
And then became my dad's. And so I was working there, a bunch of losers. I mean, it wasn't anything going on there. But continuing, like just still smoking, getting fat. Oh my God, man. I remember probably like at one of my lowest points, I remember going through the McDonald's drive-through. Mm-hmm. And in my tormented brain at the time, you wanted to get the most bang for your buck. So I got 6 cheeseburgers and supersized the fries and Coke or whatever the heck I was drinking at the time. But yeah, man, it was low. And fortunately, my grandfather, who owned the auto upholstery shop, was a very upwardly mobile guy, and he always projected that, and he'd always make you see you're worth more than what you were, right, and what you could do. So he was always such a positive influence. But at any rate, still hanging out with a bad crowd. And I was friends with this guy, and we were drinking buddies, man. We drink a lot. And he got into some trouble one night. He was out drinking and driving. He got into an accident. He fled the scene, being chased by state troopers. This is all out in out by Hershey Mills, Glen Mill, or Hershey Mills in, I guess that's Westchester,
right,
PA. And eventually they caught him, and he was just in a shit ton of trouble. Like, he had hit a bunch of things and all that, DUI, everything. He was 18 years old. His name was Scott Tucker, and he killed himself.
Sorry for your loss.
Yeah, he killed himself hard too. He got a shotgun and just took his head off. So that was like the first major loss in my life, and I was 18 at the time,
right.
And I was at my heaviest point. I stopped getting on the scale. Like, last time I had gotten on the scale was like 250, and I couldn't tell you like what the timeline was of like when that was to when Scott killed himself. But I was living in the basement of my grandparents' house because I didn't have a license. License got suspended, so I used to have to get picked up there to go to work and everything like that. And then also at my grandparents' house, and all these people are very, very out of shape. And eat, like, everything revolves around the meals. It was a classic, like American house,
right.
Pot roast on Sunday, mashed potatoes and meats there. And my grandfather was a big meat potato guy. So it was all that. But also there was their youngest son, who was a degenerate. I mean, he had like no goals in life, no purpose and everything. And he was the youngest of a very abusive, more verbally abusive family. So I was wearing his clothes. He had a size 40-inch waist. So did I at the time. And so the night of my friend Scott's funeral, I wanted to go. And I discovered that those 40-inch jeans didn't button anymore. I couldn't get them closed. And that was the lowest of the low.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just like, Jesus Christ, man. What the fuck is wrong with you? And I like how we can be so real here.
Right? We come right out of the gate strong. That's the idea.
So and it's so funny how, like, you have certain memories that are just like so vivid. Like, you can go right back to that moment. And I just remember that, and it was just so dejecting. And so and I didn't go. I didn't go to the funeral. I was like, oh, this is just, it was too much. And so for the next couple of days, man, I seriously contemplated like ending my life. I was just like, well, Scott can do it, so can I. Easy way out for sure. And it got like probably 2 or 3 days where like I was just in a terrible headspace, and so it came to one night. I had there was an old Chevy pickup truck out in my grandparents' driveway. Got a garden hose, put it in the muffler. Took the other end, put it inside the cab, and sat there, thinking about starting this truck. And literally, there was like a voice in the head, man, and it was just like, start moving, and literally, I'm telling you, it was the flip of a switch. It was that night. I went inside. I cleaned all that shit up so my grandmother didn't find it. And I went inside and just like sat there and talked to myself about what I was going to start doing. I was going to start exercising every day. I was going to start eating healthy. I didn't know what any of this stuff was, but I knew everything I was doing was wrong. So all I had to do was like opposite
of what you were doing.
And I literally started the next morning at a flight of stairs at my grandparents' house. I just started going up and down flights of stairs, and it was awful, man. I remember doing like 2 or 3 flights, and I'd be like so out of breath. Right. But then the exercise progression was I would had a flight on every week.
Right.
Right. And then it just evolved from there. Looking back on it now, like all this shame that I still had, like I would never go outside and exercise.
Right.
God forbid anybody
see
me doing something positive for myself.
Right.
And it's funny because, all these years now of having, studied, like, of course, all the psychology and everything like that goes along with change, but even the AA program, the 12 steps, like how significant that is if you really want to make a lasting change. And so I really adhered to a lot of that. But one of the biggest things is it doesn't matter whether you are trying to be a recovering addict from whatever, and food being a part of that. You have to, one of the biggest factors for success is remodeling your whole cohort, like the whole group you are associated with. Right. And so that was
changing your people, places, and things.
Man, you are the company you keep.
Right.
And it's so hard to, you can't keep hanging out with that same group.
Now, did you change that like right away? Like that?
My
remember
friend,
you said you had your posse.
The friend group was easier to change because they were still going down a path.
But family
was tough because I'm living at my grandparents'. I couldn't escape.
And they're
them.
cooking, and they're right.
Well, I immediately started taking over, like my cooking. Like I ate a half dozen egg whites in the morning.
Was that well embraced? I mean, were they like, cool, look what he's doing?
No, dude. No, that's what I'm getting to. It's just like, man, no. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, you're wasting all the eggs. They would, even though like I changed like all these things, I'm eating a half a dozen egg whites, a piece of white bread, right? Because that was all that was in the house. I didn't know any better than that. But a piece of white bread, a piece of Myers Italian white bread.
Right. Which is about Italian is
yeah, right. Yeah. I'm sure that stuff would still not have mold on it today.
Yes, exactly.
But so I used to put ketchup on the eggs, and they would sit there, and my these are all people who are obese,
right?
But they would sit there and they would nitpick like, there's so much sugar in that ketchup.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, all right. Well, it's my problem now.
Right.
Oh my God.
You think people undermine the resistance to change by making suggestions?
They don't want you
because they don't want you to get better.
They don't want you to get better.
Right.
They don't want you to get
Misery
better.
loves company.
I think.
I mean, I don't think it necessarily in a bad way. But
I think it's a lot of they don't. I think that it's a couple of things. I think it's misery loves company, sure, but also I think it's tough to see someone succeed while you're not.
Hell yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because again, these are all people who didn't exert the control that they could have with moving more and eating better.
What's that old saying? Haters are a sign I'm doing something right.
Yeah,
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah,
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, I progressively increased, and this is all before I knew anything about anything, but I just knew I had to keep on pushing, and so over a year's time of continually pushing my exercise and continuing, like literally, I was on, and I look back on it and say I was on like a deserted island diet, like I ate the same exact thing every single day for 1 year, breakfast, lunch, dinner.
Right.
Same exact thing. I lost 88 pounds in a year. And it's just.
Now, does it take time for your body to catch up because all the skin and all that other shit? Like, how does that?
Yeah, I still, I still have like marks on me that time definitely has adjusted for me. But, skin hangs, man. You lose 88 pounds, dude.
In a year? Wow. Yeah.
It's definitely different.
Now, how did people react to you when they saw you? Like, because now you're out in it, and you're running into people that haven't seen you in a year, and you're 88 pounds later.
It's super positive. I mean, most of it was super, and the other like tough psychological thing for me, and I still have this, is I don't really do great with compliments.
Right.
And so, and then all of a sudden, you're somebody who never got them, and now everybody's just, oh my God, you look great, this and that, and I kind of felt ashamed. I was just like, oh.
And they're also acknowledging at the same time that you used to be heavy, right?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which has its own sting, even though it's the past.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And even to this day, you're just like, geez.
Right. Yeah, it's funny.
But it was also a super blessing, right?
Right.
Because it led me here.
Right.
I don't know if here is anywhere.
That's why I started with gift. That's why I started with gift of desperation.
Yeah,
People
for sure.
I learned that in recovery community, and when I first heard it, I was like, "What the fuck is gift of desperation? How is that?" And then over time, you start to realize that anything that caused you to be desperate enough to really make a substantial change, that could be really big. And you start to, and if you embrace those things and make benefit out of it, later on, you look at the desperation as a gift, but you don't look at it in the initial stage because you're still in the middle of the storm.
Right, for sure.
So you change 88 pounds change. Now you're 19, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just about, right?
Yeah.
So you went on to, but you said your emotional state was kind of caught up in where you had previously been. So it sounds like there was some major pivotal point. Like what brought you to basically leaving, grandfather's business, right? And, and heading, because you went to school for what, kinesiology or what was it?
Kinesiology.
Kinesiology. There we go. Okay.
Movement science.
Yes, right? Sir. So, but I mean, did you go directly or?
No,
right.
So also during that time, you're doing all these wonderful things for yourself.
Right.
You're eating better. You're moving more. I didn't have a license, so I needed a bike. I got a bike.
Right.
And the bike was, what a saving grace. I mean,
right.
Man, I wish I could have calculated how many miles I put on that freaking Univega mountain bike. It was
right.
Thousands.
Right.
Thousands of miles.
How long did you not have a license for?
I think probably about 2 years.
Yeah.
Like underage drinking, driving a suspended license, like,
right.
It just all adds up. It was a very vicious cycle, right?
Right.
But then I got into a new cycle. So anyway, during that time of all these positive changes, I also realized, you know what? I don't feel like working in a garage for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm. What were you doing in the garage, incidentally? Like, were you
auto upholstery, man. I was making custom seat covers. I was doing headliners.
Shit, I wish I would have known that.
Convertible tops.
I need some help with some cars, bro.
Dude.
What's up, man?
Yeah. I mean, it was great. So, and because my grandfather was such a significant part of my life, and this upwardly mobile guy, that's what he would say all the time. Upwardly mobile, just be always upwardly mobile. Education. It was huge. He was huge on education, and he had his own story, man. He was an orphan,
right?
He was raised by his aunt and uncle, and he served in the army during World War II, and
right.
It's freaking awesome, man. He was just a super guy. But during this whole time,
would you say he filled more of a father role than your actual father, since you guys were?
Dude, 1,000%.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there was no doubt there. Yeah.
Right.
Anybody that hit you is an asshole. Like
yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
I don't know anybody that has a great relationship with somebody that hits them.
Yeah, no doubt.
But so anyway, Grandpa and my aunt on my mom's side, my mom's sister, they were both like super incredible influences in my life, and all about education. And so they pushed me and got my GED, and then enrolled at the DC Cube, Delaware County Community College.
Right.
Started taking classes there, and actually really paying attention to participating in class and performing well, and found out that all right, yeah, I kind of like learning. This is kind of great. This all makes
learning or the
this all makes sense in this
learning
trajectory.
Or the subject matter specifically. Like, you know what I mean? Like did you like the classes that weren't?
This was all just gen ed stuff at DCQ. This was I needed to get some initial college credits to really start getting into stuff. And so I think I went to DC Cube for a year and a half, and then got into the Penn State satellite campus there in Delco.
Okay.
Right by the old Granite Room Mall. Went there for a year. So I had dropped out in 92. All my friends graduated in 93. So there were already in college, you know, and I'll just come back to this, but eventually got into Penn State up at main campus, University Park, and I was a business major because like a lot of my family was in business and everything, and I had a calculus class, and the professor had, I mean, literally just come from Asia.
Right.
I couldn't understand
right.
anything going on. And, you know, and when there's that sort of barrier there, everything seems so much faster. Right. And I'm just like, and I'm sitting in the front of the class. I'm like trying to take like copious notes on what's going on. And there was no way. I was like, I'm done. Like, there's no way I am going to be a business anything because I'm never getting past this class. Right. So at the time, you know, this is all pre-computer stuff where we just started like using emails and stuff. And Penn State had a course book that was like 2 inches thick. And so I'm just like laying on the couch in the apartment one day. I'm looking through this course book, trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And I came across athletic training. And I was like, oh, what is this? And you know, it's all about like sidelines and you know, helping athletes and
right.
I was like, wait a minute, I've been doing this. This is something I absolutely love. So this is what I want to get into. So that's how I got into this.
So what was your family surprised that you were changing your trajectory when you said, hey, listen, you went from a business major to suddenly like.
First of all, the only two people that gave a shit was my grandfather and my aunt. Right. Everybody else was on the sidelines, kind of like, "Oh, good for you," you know. And
you know.
I mean, I shouldn't say that. There were other family members that were equally like, just you know, I have my dad's youngest brother is awesome. I love him, Uncle Todd. And my other aunt, my mom's two sisters are both fantastic. And so there was definitely more people that had a component in that life
that cared.
Yeah, for sure. But certainly the one aunt and my grandfather were like super catalysts.
Right.
No, I think they were like, you know, do what you love. I think my grandfather a little bit more was just like, well, you're not going to make any money.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Well, you're talking to a kid who went to art school.
Yeah.
My dad was like, listen, you know, not many people make money. You know what I mean? As artists, you know, like the starving artist thing, like, you know, I didn't want to listen. Right. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to listen.
I think, it's tough, like, because, you know, I know as a parent now, like, you always have fear for your children. You're
right.
just like,
you don't want to make the same mistake.
Because my daughter went to art school.
Yeah, right. Is she working as an artist now?
She is. She's a word artist. She's a copywriter.
Okay, so there you go.
Yeah.
So,
but she initially went in, like, thinking she was going to be a photographer, and I was just like, oh.
Well,
dude.
So it's interesting that, you know, we're talking about that, because for me, you know, like all right, so what ended up happening was, so I went to art school at University of the Arts, formerly University of the Arts, because they just shut down, right? And I went for a year and dropped out because I got high, bottom line. And but while I was there, you know, like I wanted to be an illustrator. So, you know, when I dropped out, you know, I was working on South Street selling crystals and, you know, New Age books and shit. You know what I mean? Like art supplies on Spring Garden and all over the place. But there was a point where some people that I knew started to transition into, especially after I got out of the service, people were using Adobe. Right, it was like the big thing. Like artists and illustrators, they were using, you know, Adobe had become the standard, and I had learned on Corel, and that was a whole other platform that wasn't like the industry standard. So people were like, can you do digital work? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, what experience do you have with Adobe? And I was like, I'm a Corel guy. And they'd be like, next. You know what I mean? Like nobody wanted to talk to me.
Right.
So, you know, and that in a weird way saved me. Mm-hmm. And the reason why was because I would have been a digital artist. And what ended up happening was that creativity ended up leaching out of me instead of in a structured way. I mean, you've seen paintings and stuff I've done around the house and those type of things. But,
I see your arms, man.
Right. Yeah. But I guess the point is that it made its way out. That's the reason why we're having this podcast. It was like, it was just a creative thing. It was like, how would this look and how would this feel and how do we set it up and how do we wire it together and what equipment do we need? You know what I mean? And what would be the format and what would be the message and what would we call it? And I'm an artist.
Yeah.
I just, I'm not always on a brush or on a canvas or on a computer. So, and you are too, in a way, you know what I mean? Like, I've noticed, like, even though it's progressive and it's slow, like behind the scenes, I don't know what app you're using or what program you're tracking everything on. Every once in a while, I'm kind of like, what the hell do you got on this phone over there? Like, what is this? Wait. What is this ass kicking I'm getting ready to get today? And you're like, and you're tracking it all. So you know exactly, and it's progressive. So, and you have more than one client. So you're obviously tracking the progressive many, right? So you're picking up on, little tiny incrementally where we left off last time and just pushing it a little further forward. That's it. Yeah. And it's interesting that ties to your beginnings, right? Like you progressively changed from being a fat kid into, progressing into school and then progressively learning, incrementally making steps towards progress.
Yeah.
And, and now basically with the training and the experience and all those things, still incrementally helping others make progress. It's pretty compelling that from a 18-year-old kid, you know what I mean, who, went through a tragedy like that, you know what I mean? Like watching one of your friends kill himself hardcore, but to that gift of desperation, leads you to a incremental path of change and you're still on it. I still see you today. You're still on it.
Aren't we all, right? It's all, well, so, I mean,
we like to say that
through 50 years now, you look at it's stepping stones, right?
Right.
So, and that's why I called it progressive because that's exactly what it is and what it should be. Like the models of, overnight success and drop 30 pounds in 30 days. All that stuff is such bullshit.
Yeah, except you dropped 88 in a year. But then again, 88 in a year is with a very drastic change. Right? You know what I mean? Like that part wasn't incremental.
Well,
that was shocking.
Not necessarily.
Well, yes, but I guess,
successful weight loss now that I know all these statistics.
Right.
Successful weight loss long term is like a 1/4 pound to 2 pounds per week.
Right.
So if you look at that over 56 weeks, I was right in that line.
Right in line with that.
And I was fortunate that I was 18, 19 years old. I had a lot of time on my hands and I had a bike,
right?
So
well, what would you, let me ask a question. You're 50 what now?
50. We're going to keep it right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. 5 years my junior. You're catching up to me though, man.
I'm right
Come
on
on,
your
man.
heels,
I'm putting the brakes on.
Wait on you.
And let you catch up to me, bro.
See, I get to see 5 years ahead of me. And I'm just like, all right.
Shut up, man. So, okay. So here you are, a 50-year-old man, right? That's, going through some trials and tribulations, certainly danced on the fucking volcano. There ain't no doubt about that. Right. So you get an opportunity for 5 minutes to say something to 18-year-old you. What do you say?
Oh man. Number one, hang in there, and, consistency is key.
Consistency is key.
Consistent progress brings consistent results.
Right.
For sure. Well, that's it.
What led you from the point where you were, okay, so you're progressing, you get out of college, right? I know that for a point there, like, did you work for another company or did you work at a fitness center? Like, how did you end up doing professional fitness coaching before you got your own gig? How did that go?
Okay. Well, so I was in the athletic training major at Penn State for 2 years. And at the time it was like such a popular major. There was a waiting list to get into the classes that you needed.
Okay.
So, I got to the point where like I was still like a year on the wait list.
Okay.
And, backtrack for a second here. When I was still living at my grandparents', I was probably at DC Cubed at the point, but still in my, still in my initial phase of my whole new year. A friend of mine who had graduated from high school, Rob Jones, enlisted in the Marines. And so he was down at Paris Island, and I have a deep affection for this guy. I still talk to Rob, but you know, and you know, they're not allowed any communication. We certainly didn't have cell phones back then, but you wrote letters,
Right.
And which is super cool to see that my son still does with his buddies today, and guys that are in the service academies and stuff. But Rob and I would write, and Rob didn't know it at the time, and I've told him since that I was living vicariously through him. I was like, you know what? He's getting woken up at 5 a.m., you know, and it was just like, you know, I'd picture like Full Metal Jacket coming in with the trash cans, waking everybody up, and getting out in the run. I was like, if he's getting up at 5 a.m. to get his ass kicked, then I'm going to start getting up, get my ass kicked. And so, and I would learn, like, and this was a little bit more, this is probably like 4 or 5 months into this whole thing. And so I had, through Rob, I started the confidence of getting my ass outside and running. And, and when I say running, I mean it was a turtle crawl,
gasping for air and a whole bit.
But it was, and I still remember that hill to my grandparents. You go down going out, it's up on the way back, right at the end, right? I think it's where I get my affection for like hard shit at the end now. But anyway, so Rob was a big part of it. So while I was at Penn State, and I had this, I was on this wait list, and I started thinking about what I wanted to do after school, where I wanted to go. And I thought about, I was like, well, if I join the Marines after I graduate, I have officer. I can go in and do officer training.
Right.
So that really became a big motivating factor for me. And I had taken a break at University Park, moved back home, and started doing a work study at Riddle Hospital in their cardiac rehab program, which was exceptional. This gave me like a whole new thing of, because, you know, when you're in school, you just learn everything in textbooks, and any practical stuff that you're doing is with other students. So it's all young. This gave me an opportunity to work with a whole different population in cardiac rehab, you know, a lot of older people, and really a much slower pace, but still getting to see like incremental progress and what a significance that made in somebody's life, like literally like for their life, like you know, they're on the precipice of like dying, and you know, they had this heart incident, and now they're in a cardiac rehab program. So that was really super awesome. And then so let's just make long story short here. Transferred to Westchester to finish out my degree in kinesiology because I didn't feel like doing this waiting game. Also, at the same time, I happened to meet a woman, and we had a daughter.
How that goes.
Yeah. So anyway, so I ended up graduating from Westchester University. At the time, Pat Croce, who was one of my idols.
Pat Croce.
Pat Croce, absolutely amazing human being. He was part owner of the 76ers, president of the 76ers at the time, and was speaking at my commencement at Westchester University at the same time that he got the 76ers worst to first playing Orlando Magic in the NBA playoffs. Speaking at my commencement. So the night before, I wrote Pat Croce my resume and everything. Had it in my pocket. I was going to give it to him when he hands me my diploma up there. This is how I envisioned this whole thing. At the commencement, because they were playing Orlando Magic, he had to go. Like, he comes out, he does like the Pat Croce rah-rah, gets everybody amped up, and then he's out. And I was just like, damn. Well, hold on. I had graduated, but I still had an internship to do. So I had an internship at the Healthplex in Springfield, Pennsylvania.
Right.
At the time, the Healthplex was the 76ers training center. So that summer, while I'm doing this internship, got to know all these guys, right? In addition to making some great connections with the people who are working at the Healthplex, which is also associated with the Springfield Hospital. So it's like a whole medical community as well. So at the end of that summer, they offered me a job to work there, or one of the head trainers there, this guy Alex Bestuzek, he and I had made a real great connection. And he's, obviously a couple of years my senior there. But he had just been asked to run the new training center at PCOM, the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, which was the Sixers' new training center.
Right.
And he's like, Dave, I want you to come help me here. First job out of college, I was the assistant recreation manager at PCOM's new training facility for the 76ers.
That rocks.
And then I got to actually walk and talk with Pat and meet all these guys and everything. So it was awesome.
His mentality is phenomenal.
Dude.
He's one of those guys one of those early people of influence where I was like, the teat of energy coming off of this guy.
Unbelievable,
I mean?
man.
Badass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Absolutely.
Yeah,
so that's
dude.
totally cool.
Amazing. And so that was an incredible opportunity. And that's also, I was a young kid. I was very upwardly mobile and
just like Pop-Up told you to be.
Yeah.
All right.
And I started working. I started playing full court 21 with Rick Mahorn, and then this buddy that he had. His kid's name was Brian Lee.
Okay.
Who was a local Philly guy. He went to Philadelphia University.
You mean at the facility?
At the facility. We would.
That's pretty ballsy, being out on the court with, you know what I mean? It's not like you're at a high school basketball court, for Christ's sake. You know what I mean?
I had never played basketball before in my life.
Yeah, they're professional players.
I didn't know what I was doing. Rick Mahorn taught me how to shoot basketball.
Yeah, that's
it was freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And he's a massive human being.
Right.
Massive human being. Thump and bump. I got to know all this stuff because I didn't know anything about basketball.
Right.
I knew who the 76ers were. I sure knew who Pat Croce was. But outside of that, I didn't know anything about basketball.
Right. You weren't like a basketball fan or a fanboy or anything like that. Right.
So it was awesome. So anyway, I'm playing this full court 21 with Brian and Rick. I developed this friendship with Brian, who was a great guy. And he started introducing me professional basketball players. I don't think I'll say anybody's name, but outside of the 76ers, guys that played on Toronto, guys that played here, but they're all Philly guys.
Right.
And he's like, you should let Dave train you. Dave should train you. And so I started working with professional athletes at, how old was I? 23 years old.
Now I really feel out of shape.
And it was incredible. It was a great experience, right? But my whole goal at that time was I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach.
Right.
And
now, why specifically a strength and conditioning coach as opposed
well, that's what I was into.
Yeah. Okay.
That was it. I was into strength and conditioning.
Yeah, and Lord knows, conditioning is essential for basketball. Those guys up and down the court, I've played a little bit. It completely
it'll gas you.
Real fast.
Forget about it. Even half court. Yeah, right. Absolutely.
Real fast.
You can jump on that court and it's intense. But at the time, Pat Croce's younger brother was the strength and conditioning coach. It was complete nepotism job.
Oh, that's okay.
But whatever. But
I'll be friends with him too. Yeah, I'm saying.
So it's funny though, because he ended up getting fired because he was stealing from the players' lockers. At the practice facility. No, not at all. No, this is all documented stuff. I'm not speaking out of school here. It was terrible, But I just remember, I got blamed for some of this stuff because it was just I didn't get blamed for it. But they were like, nobody has access to the locker room anymore.
They were trying to distance themselves from anybody who was associated with.
Yeah, they're just all right,
you get guilty by
you're not allowed in the
association
locker
type
room anymore because shit's getting stolen.
Right,
I'm just like, what?
Yeah, right.
And it ended up being Pat's brother. But anyway, so there was a ceiling there I couldn't get through. So I started working at a cardiac rehab place in Wilmington, Delaware, running a corporate facility. I
was going to ask you how you ended up further south. That sounds like about the time when you started.
My wife was a teacher in Delaware.
Right.
So we lived in Delaware. So it was a long commute every day.
Was that the girl that you met while you were still in college?
Yeah. I was married for a long time.
Right. We'll get there.
Well, we don't have to go through
we'll go there.
Yeah, the show's only what? Like, what we got left? 10 minutes?
We're not on the timeline.
So you don't want to talk about you and dancing on Volcano?
No, man.
So I started running this corporate fitness thing. Quickly found out corporate fitness is not the deal I want to be in. Found this other health club. This guy was running a health club associated with his chiropractic firm, First State Chiropractic.
Right.
Guy's name's Stacy Cohen. Super human being. And the place was right in Lantana Square, right in Hockessin, right next to the Acme. It's not there anymore. Right. Now it's like a little swim pool thing or something.
Right.
But I came in there and he was wonderful to work for. I worked there for a couple years. And then I was going to buy that club.
Right.
This is before the hack opened up.
Right. Which is
and this is all local stuff.
Which basically like absorbed the world. I just went to hack 3 or 4 weeks ago. Somebody told me I should go take a look, so I just went and walked around that place, and I was like, whoa.
Oh,
like
yeah.
the money they spent.
It's posh.
In that place.
Oh, yeah.
Unbelievable.
It's really nice. So anyway, so I was going to buy this place. After a lot of my grandfather, who's still a significant part of my life, he's like, get his books. Let me look at the books. And my grandfather's a great business guy. Smart. So after a lot of haranguing, it took me a lot to get this guy's books. I get the books. My grandfather looked at it, and like next day, he's like, this guy, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's using this as a write-off. No way, this is shit. Right. And I think at the time he was trying to sell it for like $250,000 or something like that, right?
Right.
This is all old equipment and everything like that. And my grandfather's just like, he's like, offer him $50K.
Right.
I was like, all right. So I offered him $50K. He didn't take it.
Right.
So I was like, all right, I'm going to start working for myself. And I had met this one woman who wanted her husband trained, who had come into the gym, started working with him.
Right.
And then I started literally going door to door, man. I was literally like, I got business cards made up. I went knocking on doors.
Literally,
I was like, this is what I'm going to do.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And that's how I started finding people. So there you go.
Interesting.
So that's so I went from professional athletes to everyday athletes.
I don't know if we'd go so far as the everyday athletes.
There's an athlete in everyone.
We're keeping it moving.
There's an athlete in everyone, man.
All right, so let's see here. What's the most interesting place you ever visited or want to visit?
Like overall in life, like interesting place.
Yeah, like what was the top spot? That was like, because I know
I just got
since
back
I've
from
known
Colorado.
you got back from Colorado, and you were like, I dig Colorado.
No, I'm moving to Colorado.
Right, yeah, I know. But you've also done, north central Cali.
I'd have to say at this point in my life, because I've gotten to explore it more, and particularly with my son and my brothers and my uncle, is Northern California.
So awesome.
The Tahoe area, South Lake Tahoe, that whole endless mountain region. Desolation Wilderness. Oh God, man, it's just amazing. It's beautiful. It's heaven on earth for me. Right. They got everything out there. They got all the mountains. They got all these beautiful crystal clear lakes and rivers and a lot of cliff jumping.
I said it to you this morning. I'm surprised you're still here.
Oh man. But then they're also blessed with like bluebird days, no humidity,
right,
and like no bugs. I'm just like, how?
Yeah, right. That's the reason.
So
it's the reason why you pay 3 times as much for real estate, twice as much for gas. You know what I mean? Like, you get those benefits, but there are some challenges.
For sure. Oh, you got to be making some coin out there for sure.
Right.
But close second at this point is definitely Colorado. Yeah. Morrison, Colorado. That's my spot.
Morrison, Colorado.
Colorado. Home of the Red Rocks.
Home of the Red Rocks. Now it's kind of interesting because I got like all these questions and shit, and I can just pluck an occasional question and just fire it out and see what's up. So. All right, so this one says for friends, and I consider you a friend. What's one thing you know about me that others would be surprised to learn? That's an interesting one.
I think number one is how artistic you are. I would say that just just being with you and you telling me about the progression of the artwork on your arms, particularly your left arm, and then you showing me the actual pieces of art that you worked on to get that onto your arm.
Not a lot of people go to a world-class tattoo artist with a bunch of work and say, here's conceptually what I want, and here's the, you know what I mean? And here's the way, you know what I mean? Like I actually, now they have apps that you can, it'll AI, or you can take artwork that you like and it'll stretch it over. But what I did was I took measurements of my arm at different distances.
Yeah.
And basically made a template of my arm like it was a sleeve.
Holy crap.
And then started doing different designs on it. So there were like half a dozen different designs.
It's like that Amazon, like, try it in your room.
Yes. It's exactly what it was. I was like, well, I figure I'm going to wear this. What a lot of people don't know is I went around the world 2.5 times in the Navy and never got tattooed.
Right.
And people would go to we were in Perth, Australia, and all the guys were like, they're like, they go in and guys, come on, mate, we're going to tattoo you. And they'd come out with these crazy, tribal bands and all this stuff.
And it's meaninless. I mean, you say it oh, well, it's this or it's that, you attach it this. No, but so that's why I think I love your artwork the most. And I've told you this, is that you're the first person I ever met that actually has art. It's not just some rando, well, let's do some tribal stuff, let's do some constellations, this, that, and everything.
Right.
You have two sleeves, and if people won't be able to see this, but it's beautiful. On his right arm, he's got this amazing American flag with the eagle on his shoulder. It's so patriotic. And of course, it's just he's a Navy guy. It's this whole thing, right? And you're just it's so badass. But then his left
I was
arm,
compensating a little bit, maybe. Truth. You know what I mean? I was going through a phase where it was strangely enough, and and I'm not necessarily sure if I said this to you, it was there have been times where, so there have been all these transitions that have happened in specifically in the United States where what you are or what you represent or what your brand is or what you look like has changed as the times have changed. Mm-hmm. And I just told somebody, I own this company, Patriot, and one of my clients, he and I were talking today, and the last time Dean and I went out to see him, I brought him a T-shirt. And so he's wearing a T-shirt around with the Patriot USA because he likes the logo. He thinks it's really cool. And that's really awesome when somebody else wants to wear your stuff, right?
Right.
But he was saying that, how people were reacting to him. And I said to him, what was really strange about Patriot was, through a series of, challenges or whatever, originally got involved in 1998, right? You know what I mean? And actually we founded it under somebody else's name, and it was supposed to be their company, and then I bought it outright, but it was really going to be mine because it was Patriot, and then I bought it. So really, technically, the company was started in 98, right? But between 98 and September 11th of 2001, it meant one thing. And then September 12th, 2001, it meant something else, right? Because after they hit the Twin Towers and for a couple weeks, the business stopped and everybody flew the flags outside. Then after that, it was being patriotic was, for all intents and purposes, in fashion. But I've had people say to me now, hey, it ought to be awesome to be disabled veteran-owned company. That should be great for getting business. And I'm like, yeah, that and 50 cents will get me a cup of coffee. Yes, of course, there's some benefit to people who believe that that's important to them, but it's disproportionately not important to the vast majority of the people that I would ordinarily do business with. So it's not a leveraging point. You know what I mean? Right. And the tattoo's another good example, because I got the tattoo because I'm a disabled vet. I got the tattoo because I'm patriotic. And then, we went through all these changes and, January 6th and all this other stuff. And suddenly there were some changes in the way people viewed even my arm.
It's crazy.
Because now suddenly they thought that was a sign of some political affiliation. Right. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Don't assume one way or the other I'm with one faction or another. You know what I mean? it was a way to, to immediately label and identify me as something that, for all intents and now, I might be in alignment with some views of one political party and some views of another, and I don't generally talk about politics because people are polarized to their views, but it was just weird because now suddenly, sometimes I'm like,
literally,
I don't want to hide it.
I know
what
exactly
I mean?
what you're talking about. Like,
I don't want to hide it.
I had somebody say something to me about the flag that I have outside of my house.
Yes.
I'm like,
yes.
Wait, what?
Yes.
And because I drive a pickup truck.
Yes, right. You know what I mean? And I'm like, well, listen, you know what I mean? Like and I used to say all the time, well, if you've got a problem with the fact that I've got an American flag tattooed on my arm, then we're probably not good in alignment to do business with.
Right.
But then I'm building companies that are going global. And now it's different because now my American patriotism has to transplant into parts of the world where I'm not going to say we're not well embraced, but at least in part that American spirit runs counterintuitive to what they're trying to do. Like their positioning and the way they view, their, the way they look at, their nations and those type of things. So, like I'd like to do business in Dubai. I probably won't be walking around wearing t-shirts there.
Right.
Right. You know what I mean? Like, not to mention somebody might not run up behind me and, with a sack and put it over my head and drag me off into a car. You know
but
what
even,
I mean? Like,
but it's the worst part is the feedback that you get right here. Right?
Yeah.
You kind of expect like,
yes,
okay, if I'm going
agreed.
to travel over there, definitely.
Agreed.
At any rate, I just think your fucking artwork is awesome. And
thank you.
and your left arm, I mean, what you got going on there is just, there's like, the story is just incredible. It's beautiful.
Maybe we'll get Dean during the editing process. We'll get to overlay, pictures of the sleeves so people can actually see what he's talking about.
Just actual artwork. It's just actual artwork. And I told you that like once I'm ready to get another tattoo, I want real artwork.
Well, so here's the thing, right? Like what you should do is send Shane $100.
I know.
Start,
I know.
you know what I mean? Like, because you've been saying
The
that now for a
coffee can.
couple of
I know,
years,
the
right?
coffee
You could
can.
right now. You could be, you could be lining yourself up, and you'd be like, "Yo, I'm pumped in 3 months.
Right now,
Shane's gonna drop.
I got to
ink
look
on
for
me."
a place to live out in Morrison, Colorado.
Yeah, I figured.
That's
Hey,
become the
man's got to have his priorities.
most
you know what I'm
important
saying?
thing to me now.
Right.
It's funny because going through life transitions over these last several years, I really didn't have, other than my kids going and getting their lives together, that was like the ultimate goal. It's just like, okay, I got to help my kids
get this nest empty too.
Let's get this,
what I mean?
right.
You know what I mean?
And literally like through the last year of my son, like transitioning from graduating high school and going away to school.
Boy, and that wasn't easy.
I contemplated a lot, like you divorce 50. I got nothing.
Right.
Like I got nothing. I'm like, wow, it's all
Well, it's
over.
funny. It's funny that you say nothing, right? Because being in recovery, you'll hear people say, "I lost it all."
Yeah.
And then you go, well, wait a minute. You know what I mean? Like you're vertical and fucking breathing. You got a shot. You know what I mean? And,
Right.
it's.
Yeah, I didn't mean it in that very terminal sense.
No,
but.
I understand that. I guess what I'm saying is that what I'm finding as I'm going on, and you know this because you and I have spent so much time together, you know what I mean? Like my suggestions sometimes and the way I phrase things undermine me.
Sure.
And one of the authors that I like, an author by the name of Brene Brown, she's a researcher that studies shame, and she's got one of the top 10 TED Talks, most viewed TED Talks of all time, because she basically got on stage and got all vulnerable about the fact that she was scared and all this. It's dynamite.
Mm-hmm.
But what she uses is one of her books. She says the story that I'm telling myself is, and she'll say, when I preface what it is I'm saying with the story that I'm telling myself is, then I recalibrate my brain to realize that the thing that I'm saying that's my self-talk is actually a story that I'm telling myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell other people that all the time because it's a great way to disconnect yourself from, because I can't see in my head that my self-talk is actually a suggestion that I'm making to myself that a lot of times undermines. You've seen, what I've been going through in the last couple of years and some of the challenges I've been dealing with. And, and a lot of the things that I've said, and I've even said things to Dean that were, really ultimately were suggestions about the worst case scenarios of what could possibly happen, when in reality they were just stories that I was telling myself. My subconscious don't know it. So underneath it all, I'm emotionally connected to that. So I spent a lot of nights, 3:00 in the morning, waking up in fear or worry or dread, right, over things that ultimately, the only thing we all have, you and me, is just this moment, this heartbeat, this breath.
100%. 100%.
So, all right, so let me pan through a few of these things. What's the most outrageous thing you've done for love or friendship?
Most outrageous thing I've done for love or friendship.
Oh, in a preface, if we reach any question where you don't feel comfortable with or whatever, we can skip it.
Okay.
So I'm just, I'm just kind of like throwing a couple dice out there to see.
Like, I don't know. I don't even understand. All right. Most outrageous thing I've done for love or friendship. Oof.
That oof was good, man. That meant there was something in there.
Well, I guess it all depends on like what you're going to define here. I mean, this is. I feel like this is a very fluid kind of question. Okay, let's look at.
Well, that's a story that you're telling yourself.
I mean, yes, I'm telling myself a lot of stories right now. All right. Most outrageous thing for love or friendship? That's a.
We'll come back to it. We'll come back to it.
There
so
we go.
If you could erase
maybe another time.
If you could erase one past mistake, what would it be?
Oh, good Lord. If I could erase one past mistake, well, I recently, I think I told you this. I read this thing, this book, this Paulo Coelho book, The Fifth Mountain. There's only two things to distinguish in life: the temporary and the lasting.
Right.
Temporary is the unavoidable.
Right.
Lasting are the lessons you learn from the unavoidable.
Right.
So I would say, man, one mistake I would take away?
Yeah, if you could erase one mistake.
If I've learned from my mistakes, I don't want to take anything away.
It's a good answer. Mm-hmm.
You know, I look at everything so much like that now.
Right. Everything that I've experienced that's been a mistake or a hurt.
You learn more from falling down than you do
mm-hmm.
from flying. Right?
Actually, remember that book I was suggesting to you, Mo Gaudet.
Oh, dude, I'm in it right now.
There's a part where he talks about that that disproportionately people solve for happy. That point where he talked about that, when they approached people to say that they could remove one of the most difficult or the most difficult situation in their life, but they would also have to play the tape forward and remove all the consequences of that decision.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Would they still take away that situation? And and I thought about it, like, some of the, the loss of my father and some of the really hardcore things that I've been through in my life, you know what I mean? Like the things associated with the PTSD and drug addiction and, and all those things that I've experienced in my life. And if I removed any of those things, they wouldn't have been a catalyst to change to who I am today. So once I play the tape all the way through, you know what I mean? You start to realize, but some people, you ask those questions and they immediately they've got something, you know what I mean? And frankly, if you pose that question with the caveat that, if we took it away, this is what would happen. Would you still do it? Most people will bear the burden of even the damage that they took because of the blessings that come out of it. Not everybody's in that case, but I know I am, and I know a lot of people are.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it really, it all depends on your perspective on things,
What's your greatest fear and how do you manage it?
Oh, man. Yeah, let's hit on that.
Woo! I got some good questions, don't I? I was ready for you, bro.
It's funny. I think so going back to talking about after I dropped my son off at school a couple weeks ago.
Right.
Everything preceding that weekend was really just it was just a big downer for me. I was just like, man, I'm losing my guy. Like I think I have a great relationship with my son, with both my kids, but my son's my last one. That's it.
Right.
I'm not. I'm still a dad, but I'm not dad anymore. Like
you're not day to day. It's
not an everyday
dad.
thing.
Yes,
and I really relished that role. I really did. I love being dad. I love being needed. I loved
the need to be needed.
Yeah. I would do anything, right? As most parents, do anything for your kids.
Well, not most parents, unfortunately, but you know what I mean? Like it's.
What did I learn from the horrible childhood I had was how to be a decent person, right? All you got to do is love, like really at the basis. But anyway.
Some people are ill-equipped for that, frankly. Unfortunately.
It took me a long time to learn how to really do it. Yeah. Not so much with my kids. Right. But other human beings.
Yeah, sure.
Anyway, back on track here. Before all that, it was this time where my whole focus was just kids. Right. And after I dropped him off and coming back, I didn't really have anything to look forward to, Right. Just figured just go on. Right. But then a couple of things happened within a very short period of time that coincided on me. Wow, I started really making some serious goals for myself personally, professionally. And then just coming off this Colorado trip, I'm like, wow, I got so much to do and look forward to. Right. What was the question?
Where is the fear in that?
Oh, where is the fear? So I mean? I honestly think that my fear prior to right now had always been expressing my goals, expressing my desires outwardly. Because
then you're going to be held to them?
Because I knew that I knew that I would start being accountable for things. And
well, let me ask you a question.
My fear is failure. My fear is failure.
So and sometimes this is part of the Mo Gaudet piece, right? You know what I mean? Peeling back that fear. Mm-hmm. He said that there's different layers of ways to approach it. It's something that I just added to my toolbox a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, man, this is brilliant, right? It's ask yourself what do you fear, and then just keep peeling it back. What do you really fear? What do you really fear? What do you really fear? Right? You know what I mean? And so a good example is, the fear of failure, right? Because I fear failure in a lot of ways, right? Well, what do I really fear? Well, I feel how I'll feel when I fail. What am I really fearful of? I'm really fearful of how I'll be positioned in the social hierarchy, and the people that doubted me, or the people that have doubted me, and that I'll prove them right by failing in some way. There are people behind the scenes that rally, in my mind, whether it's true or not, rally to the cause of seeing me fail. Mm-hmm. Right? You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I don't want to make those people right? And so, it's really ultimate. Once I peel back that, I get to that deeper level of feel, and I go, oh, well, what do I really feel? Yeah. You know what I mean? And then Gaudet said, well, okay, then say, so what? I was like, okay, that's pretty intense. And then he said, say, so what? Then he said, ask yourself, what would be the worst case scenario? And then could you recover from it? Mm-hmm. And then what would be the best case scenario? And I was like, so I tried doing that with some of the things that I've had on my plate recently. And, and I really peeled back, and got to the root cause of where some of my fears really lie. And then basically, I don't know what so what does, but it really does in some way kind of disconnect myself from, my attachment to that fear. And then adding to it, the worst case scenario, which I was like, oh my God, I don't really want to go to the worst case scenario. I don't really want to think about what that is. But then the next question was, could I recover from it? Right. And thought about all the difficult things I've done in my life, and that I've recovered from, that were more difficult than the things I have on my plate right now. Right. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm like, wow, this is really, and then topping it off is, what's the best case scenario? Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, I could use this. Like, this is actionable.
Right.
Right. So, yeah, but I can 100% relate. So let me just,
So, and I always, I felt like this sense of, because of dropping myself, I was running out of time. Like, even though, I'm only 50, but now I want to rewrite that whole narrative of just like, oh, wait, okay. So I did all this up to 50. What can I do now? Like, right.
I'm just, I saw you look at your watch. Are we?
Oh no, I was getting a call. Cool? I was turning it off.
Oh no, totally cool. Cause I got a couple more for you. So what's your daily training routine like for you? After you kick the shit out of me and everybody else, what do you do?
So my week, I pretty much break up my week is I'm doing 3 days of strength training.
Okay.
And sometimes
where do you do that? Do you do that at home?
Sometimes that's just bodyweight stuff. Sometimes I just do it at home. Sometimes there's I'm still in this neighborhood that has a clubhouse. Sometimes I use that. And I do prefer that because it allows me to do some of the more.
Do you ever work out with your clients?
Creative things.
Or you train with your clients? Or do you find that it's distracting?
I used to do like an outdoor group thing.
Right.
And I would work out with them.
Because you should come move these 70s with me. You know what I'm saying? Come on, bro.
We can do that.
Let's get it in. I was like, dude, if he did that with everybody he trained, he would be dead by the afternoon.
You know what's so funny is like you're literally the second person today to ask me that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you were like,
you
want to deliver the pain. Why don't you take a little bit of
but if you want to start coming working out with me, we can.
Shut up, man. I don't like this.
So 3 days of strength work, and then I try and get like another 3-4 days of some sort of cardiovascular effort in there, and mostly for me now that's mostly we're going to call them run hikes.
Now, for a little while you were doing that thing with veterans too, where you
I still do that.
You do that every week, right?
It kicks off next week. So it's all based off of the semester. So next semester kicks off next Monday and Wednesday. VCAT. Incredible program, veterans, college athletes training together. Right. It's absolutely
we'll
amazing.
Put the link in the comments below.
Oh man, dude, and I would love to have you come out, man. Like on a Wednesday,
right?
You're
like on a Wednesday.
Wednesday
Since
evening.
We train Mondays and Thursdays on a Wednesday.
I wouldn't have you do a 2 a day, but maybe an evening right before or a morning.
Oh, shut up, man.
VCAT is great, and actually, I'll be doing a program. I'm going to do a couple initial programs right here in Kennett Square in Anthony Nixon Park, through a collaboration with the Kennett Library. We're having Rana, who runs the library. We're doing a whole presentation the Wednesday prior to Veterans Day in October.
Okay.
At the library, and I'll get you information on this because I think you should totally check it out. And it's all about how do we support our veterans in the area,
right,
suffering with PTSD.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'm actually meeting with her tomorrow about it to really hone in on things. But
now you and I
love
had
doing
talked
that,
about,
and I do work out with them. I love that.
And you and I had talked about, so that we do Leadership Gold, Global Organizational Leadership Development. That's what we've been doing for a month or two. And there was a point in the conversation where you talked about that you had a previous history of doing like, leadership excursions with some people. You know what I mean, and kind of bonding excursions and things like that. And you kind of like, I could see some wheels kicking off in your head about. So it sounds like you're moving toward doing something like that again. Is that right?
The human growth experience, man.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Helping to create your news story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think at some point we might do some sort of a high power collabo. I'd like to. I know that we just moved from Fridays to Thursdays for the 10 o'clock meetings. So, but I'd like to do some sort of a collaboration with you at some point where maybe we can get some members involved in doing what you do. Right now it's across the country because we do it all on Zoom. So I have a lot of people in Central Time Zone and some people in the East. But as time goes on, we might be able to do something.
Yeah, hopefully it leads to all kinds of great things. But yeah, that's definitely a big thing on my plate right now.
Right. Well, this has been really cool, and one of the really cool things about this is that you certainly have danced on a volcano.
Dude, It was a lot of fun, man, and I hope ultimately after all the edits that this thing doesn't suck.
No, actually, I really think it was compelling.
I meant me.
And, no, shit, no, you were totally cool, man. And honestly, there were a couple times where I kind of pinched myself on this thing, just thinking like, wow, this is going not smooth. Like I thought I was going to suck. Right? You know what I mean? It went smoother than I thought it would.
So
does that make sense?
Well, I think it's just we're just having dialogue, right?
Right.
And so that book reference I sent you the other day, The Fifth Element.
Right. Is that one? I think you sent that to me this morning, wasn't it? Was that this morning?
I think it was yesterday.
Okay.
Because I just got way into it, and that was based off of the whole thing I'm doing with the human growth experience. But I was like, wow. Like anytime I listen to someone, it's like, who would like this? And I sent it to them. But I know we collaborate a lot on different listening, reading things.
We share book ideas.
Music.
Yeah. We definitely link
But that has been so powerful. And it's a really short listen. It's like 4.5 hours.
Right.
But
you're like me. You don't get a lot of
you'll love it.
Sit and face planted in a book type reading.
I do love that too, but I'm in the car so much. It's just it's so nice
easier
to have
just bang an audiobook in. And I get the same. Some people are like, oh, it doesn't count, and I'm like, bullshit.
No, you pick up so many points and you hear something, you just go back to it and just
There's sometimes I hit that 30-second button a couple times. I'm like, just gotta hear that again. I just want to make sure that sinks in. That's a key point. I'll rewind a couple times and just go.
But the cool thing about what you're doing, man, it's just having dialogue. Right. Just like let's talk about
Chop
this,
it up
see where it goes.
Right.
Nobody's gonna have any assumptions about anything. Just this is what it is.
Right.
It's great stuff, man. Thank you so much.
So, what would be a question you'd ask the next guest? You don't have to answer that here, but we're gonna give you a little. I'm gonna get a book here where you can just journal it in, and I'm just gonna slide each person here, and I'm gonna have them. It's something I got from a podcast that I like.
Yeah, I like that.
I figured, just slide it over and just kind of leave it as a journal for the next person, a question that they could ask, and then we can, move it on in perpetuity.
Very
so the
cool.
next person that comes in.
Oh, yeah.
So, before you leave, I'll get you. Or, you know what? Honestly, like it's not like I'm not going to see you on Monday. And while you're kicking my ass, you can.
Before your next pod, which is in what, 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks.
I'll get a question.
All right. That's perfect.
I'll get a question. Perfect, man. Thanks, brother.
My man. There we go. That's what's up. There we go. Let me get it proper. There we go.